Hi everyone. So here we are finally with our new series. The topics that we are going to cover now from this lecture onwards are going to be very handy for you, very helpful for you in understanding the further topics. So please understand that whatever we are building right now is going to be helping us in an immensely significant manner. So please do not take these topics lightly. Okay. So here, as you can see, we are discussing about the organs of the democratic government. The first one being the legislature. I am using your chapter number 5 from the class 11th Political Science NCRT. The name of the book is Indian Constitution at Work. And we have a dedicated chapter on legislature. And it is very, I would say beautifully given here. All the important details are given. So in future, when we will do the topics like parliament and state legislature, it's going to be very handy for you because my whole idea is not to just teach you isolated topics. What I am going to do is to give you the similarities and differences between how the legislature operates at the central level and the state level. The similar thing will happen for the executive. For example, if we are doing prime minister, we will do chief minister. If we will do union council of ministers, we will do state council of ministers simultaneously. So it will help you to understand, see those differences about the center and the state and those similarities also. So let's, without wasting any further time, let's start a discussion on the topic of legislature. Now, see, in general, if you have to understand the meaning of legislature, you need to see that it is about lawmaking or making of the legislature. Okay. So, how does this happen? Which is the body responsible for that? All of these topics will be discussed here. I'll give you a briefing of the topic, and then you will have to read this chapter. I've already given you the reference, so please do read it. Okay. Chaliye. Now the first question is, they have given you the heading that why do we need a parliament? Now please understand, before I give you this answer or take you to this answer, firstly I'll have to make you understand that what is a parliament, right? The first question should be what is a parliament? So you need to understand that the term parliament refers to the national legislature. Legislature you understand is the law making body. ठीक है? So you have law making body at the center and at the state. So the law making body at the center is what you call as parliament. The law making body at the state you will call it state legislature. So in simple words, if I have to explain you, so law making body or legislature at center and at state. Center में you call this as parliament. State में you call this as state legislature. Parliament में you have two houses, Lok Sabha. The similar kind of an arrangement you have in the state legislature, which you call as legislative assembly, which you also in Hindi call as Vidhan Sabha. Okay, it should be clear to you because you might be familiar with Vidhan Sabha and not, let's say, legislative assembly. It's one and the same. Then the other house of the parliament is Rajya Sabha. The similar replication here is of legislative council, or you also call it as Vidhan Parishad. The only idea is that it is not present in all the states. So it is present in few states, which we will see in some time. So this is the broad structure firstly that you need to understand. The second thing you need to understand is about two terms. One is your unicameral, the other term is your bicameral. Now see, when there is only one house, for example, let's say if you talk about those states which do not have legislative council and only Vidhan Sabha, only legislative assembly, that will be called as unicameral. Uni means one, so one house. And wherein you will have two houses, that will be known as bicameral. So two houses either in the state or at the center. Okay. The next concept that you need to understand is that in the previous set of videos, we have done about the topic of election, right? And you know how does election take place. Now, if I have to explain you, let's say you know about that the country would be divided into, in the case of center हम country बोल रहे हैं, अगर वही चीज state के लिए होगा, so the same would go for the state, whatever elections is happening. You know that they are divided into constituencies, right? So कंट्री के सेंस में तो यू नो 543 कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है. स्टेट के केस में इट विल डिपेंड फ्रॉम स्टेट टू स्टेट बिकॉज इट इज बेस्ड ऑन population, and from each constituency one person is elected, one representative is elected, and one representative मतलब एक वोट जो है या एक सीट जो है वो उनकी काउंट होती है. दिस इज द बेसिक of legislature. Now let's see this firstly. So the two houses of parliament, अभी हमने term बात करी, it is called as bicameral legislature. National legislature is called as parliament. State it is called as state legislature. So you know that the parliament in India has two houses. I have just shown you Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha is also known as Council of States because it represents the states, right? The Lok Sabha is called as House of the People because here the representatives are directly elected by the people. You need to understand that for the states, they have got an option by the constitution that whether you want to establish a one house system in your state or a two house system in your state. So at present, please remember this is important for prelims perspective. Only 6 states have bicameral legislature, which means also a legislative council. Everyone has a legislative assembly, but only 6 of them have legislative councils also. These are the names you need to remember. Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Uttar Pradesh. Earlier J&K was also there, but now it is not considered a state, so of course that doesn't matter. So states में आपको ये याद रखना है, ठीक है? This is anyways the map that you can see here. So the point is that the first question that they have raised is that why would you need two houses? You could have managed with one house. These are the questions that again have the potential of figuring out in prelims or mains in whatever format. So firstly, you need to see, let's say we have a country like India which is so huge and so much diverse that they do prefer to, at least at the central level, have two houses. The reason being that at least we have an option to give representation to all the sections of the society, be it geographical region, different parts of the country. Another advantage of this two house system is that you can have the possibility of reconsideration of every decision. What does it mean? If we will have just one house, what will happen? The decision regarding the law making, the bill will be introduced there, the entire process of, bill to act will happen, and then the law will be formed. But if we will have just one house, what will happen? It might have certain flaws in it, certain, because there will be just one time process that will take place there. So it might have certain issues related, but when the same thing goes to the another house and the same process happens twice, of course it ensures a double check on every matter, and it prevents the one house from taking any decision in the haste. Because even if they would have, let's say, hurriedly passed out a bill, it will be possible that the other house, when they will get it for reconsideration, they will maybe take, good enough time to consider that, and they will not do this hurriedly. So this is the advantage of having two houses, which is very important. Now, what are the details of the two houses? हम थोड़े देर में आएंगे. Let's get back to the first set of points, which you need to understand that exactly why do we need a parliament? Is it only because it is a law-making body? No. Definitely, it is the most important, or let's say the prime function of a legislature. The most important thing, it is the center of all the democratic political process. What does this mean? For example, any kind of process related to democratic government, be it action, walkouts, protests, demonstration, unanimity, concern, cooperation, they all are related to democracy because it gives voice to the people, because democracy is about the people's government, or let's say the people's representations here. So this kind of a system, legislature gives that option to people to exercise these aspects of democracy. Also, it is very important that if you need to have a genuine democracy, you cannot expect it without a representative, efficient, and effective legislature. Also, it helps the people in holding the representatives accountable. That representatives, अगर काम वैसा नहीं कर रहे, they're not performing the work that they're expected to do by you, then you can hold them accountable. And therefore, the basis of representative democracy is taken care of with the help of legislature. There are issues related to it, and these kind of pointers are helpful in mains where they can give you analytical questions related to, because it relates to the concept of separation of power, which I've taught you earlier. That if we have these three branches, legislature, executive, judiciary, they are given their own sets of power, they have to do their own set of work. But especially in countries like India, we have the system of checks and balance also, wherein we do see that one organ do not try to surpass the another organ, and they stay in their own limits, if you say so. So at times it might happen that one organ tries to overtake the other organs also. And in that case, like for example here, if we just say so about legislature and executive, so in most democracies, legislatures are losing the central place to the executive. I will deal with this topic in detail in the next video. For the time being, just understand legislatures are the people you elect, and the ones in Rajya Sabha also, which are indirectly elected. Both are elected, but directly and indirectly. Executive, let's say, is the ministerial body. So the minister, or let's say the ones forming the government. Just for the time being, understand this basic difference. Now, in India, what is happening? For example, yes, we do understand that the cabinet plays a major role. They will initiate the policies, they will set the agenda for the governance, they will do everything. So, at times, it is even claimed that in India, it seems that the parliament has declined and the entire power is lying with the executive, which is cabinet. लेकिन do you deny the significance of legislature here? No. Why? Because even if the cabinet is, let's say, very strong, they will be able to sustain, or they will be able to stay as a government only till the time they retain majority in the legislature. I will explain this very briefly to you. Let's say, so you have this parliament here. So you have Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the two houses. ठीक है? यहाँ पे you have the directly elected members which we choose from constituencies after voting. Here is indirect election, about which there was a section in the previous video of elections also, and I've told you that the process I'll explain when the right time comes. Abhi we have not yet discussed it because thoda sa slightly complex process, because you know what kind of a system we use in this election. You have to write in the comment section if you have done the topics very precisely. So just understand what is happening here. So whatever is the format, direct or indirect election, you are electing these representatives, right? Now in this case, what will happen? Some members from here, some members from here, they will be the ones who will form the government, because they will be the party, winning party. Okay, or let's say the coalition ones with the winning party, and the rest will be the opposition. Okay, but they will call as the legislature. So the whole idea you have to understand is that to form a government, that party and those leaders should gain majority in the legislature. So therefore, it is very, very important. Of course, parliament and legislature, if you say so, provides a platform for debates and discussions, which is the most important thing in a democracy. So first section we have done. These are just for your activity perspective. If you want to read it, go ahead in your spare time. This section we have understood. Now let's see about the first house, which is your Rajya Sabha. The counterpart of it is legislative council in states, but those things we will discuss जब हम वो सब topics लेंगे based on the pointers given in Lakshmikant plus the Constitution of India. अभी NCERT just gives you a briefing of it, so we will stick to what is given here. Now you know that each of the two houses they are telling, they have different bases of representation, because the whole idea of having a house is very different. Like the Rajya Sabha, what is the idea of having Rajya Sabha? That they will represent the states of India, and the Lok Sabha will be people's house, right? So here it is an indirectly elected body. Now अगर आप कोई चीज स्टेट के लिए बात करते, यहाँ पर क्या हो रहा है? दिस indirectly elected body कहाँ से आ रहे हैं? स्टेट से आ रहे हैं. Now in Rajya Sabha में, if in simple terms you have to understand that the election takes place. So states में what happens? The people of that state elect their MLAs, members of the legislative assembly. Like in country, the people elect their MP, members of parliament. ठीक है? Basic सी चीज है. Now these MLAs, because they are elected in different states, and MLAs मतलब member of legislative assembly, मतलब member of Vidhan Sabha. So they elect, these MLAs elect the Rajya Sabha members. And here when we say that in country the people directly elect their MP, they are basically electing the Lok Sabha members. So therefore we say that in Lok Sabha direct election happen by the people, in Rajya Sabha indirect election happen, because people are electing those MLAs in the state, they are then electing Rajya Sabha members. अभी कुछ दिन पहले राज्य सभा का इलेक्शन हुआ, अगर आपने न्यूज़ पढ़ा होगा, so you must be understanding this. Now, so this is what they have given you. ठीक है? That the state residents will elect the state legislative assembly members, which means your MLA, and they will in return elect the members of Rajya Sabha. Now there could be two possibilities of representation in Rajya Sabha. One will be that whatever number of states you have in the country, you give equal representation to them. Like it happens in the case of US. So they have 50 states and they give 2 seats to each state. ठीक है, so 100 seats हैं उनके Senate में. Now it doesn't matter that the state is having lesser population or it is a smaller state or larger state. Every state will get equal representation. It has its advantage. Advantage is equality. Disadvantage is that even the smaller state is getting as much of equal representation as the larger state, which is kind of in some way unfair also. So of course it has its own advantage and disadvantage. The other kind of thing that can this kind of a system is called as symmetrical representation. So symmetry मतलब आप equal seats का मौका दे रहे हो सबको. The other kind of system or possibility that we can have is the asymmetrical. Asymmetrical में each state will not get equal representation. So how do they get? Here what happens? The representations happen according to the population. So in India we have this. For example, we have, let's say, a state Uttar Pradesh, the largest one, and let's say we have a state, another one Sikkim, very small in the population. So that is what is to be understood कि यूपी को आप जो representation दोगे उनके population के according Sikkim will get accordingly the population representation and the other states also. So here we are not giving each and every state an equal representation. We are making sure, let's say उत्तर प्रदेश का अगर population कुछ इतना lakhs है तो if we just do it equally it will get equal seats that of Sikkim जिसका population कुछ इतना lakh है. So here it is 1998.12 lakhs, here it is only 6.10 lakhs. Does it make sense to give them equally? So this is what the constitution makers decided, that we have different the kind of population in different states. So what we will do accordingly, we will allot them the seats. Share उसी हिसाब से होगा, that is your proportional representation. So state जैसे उत्तर प्रदेश हो गया, so that sends 31 members to Rajya Sabha, and let's say a smaller state like Sikkim will send 1 member to Rajya Sabha. Now the question here also is that where is it given that what number of members would come from which state? There has to be some place where it should be given, and that I have taught you when I was teaching you the fourth schedule, when I was teaching you the schedules of constitution. So the members जितने भी आएंगे, number of members to be elected from each state, that has been already fixed by the fourth schedule of the constitution based on the population. So this is again a prelims point that you will remember. Now next point is about what is the tenure of the Rajya Sabha members. Like for Lok Sabha you know, या फिर for Vidhan Sabha you know, it is 5 years. ठीक है. What is for Rajya Sabha? So it is 6 years. Of course the members do have the right to get re-elected, and all the members. Here what happens? Lok Sabha का क्या हो जाता है? Let's say 5 years if it gets over, there will be fresh elections. ठीक है. And the Lok Sabha gets dissolved. Dissolved मतलब it is over, it's done. Next election होगा, accordingly whatever party will form the government, they will rule. But in Rajya Sabha what happens? It is never completely dissolved. So it is not a dissolving body. Why? Because here all the members are not, their term do not get over at same time. So here what happens? Every 2 years, every 2 years, 1/3 of the Rajya Sabha members will complete their term, and then the elections will happen for that 1/3 seat only. The reason of, and therefore it is never fully dissolved, and therefore it is also called as permanent house because it is never dissolved. The reason of doing this, because even when let's say Lok Sabha is dissolved and elections are yet to take place, if there is any urgent matter, you will at least have one house in hand to conduct the meeting and go ahead with that. So if let's say Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha दोनों dissolve हो जाएंगे, both will get over, and there will be no house into existence, and there will some urgent matter that will figure out which house will take care of it, because you don't have any house. Therefore it is always important to have one house into the place, which is Rajya Sabha. But if you have one house into the place, you cannot let it continue like this forever. I mean the same members. Therefore you make an arrangement that you get a tenure for 6 years, and so every 2 years there will be election, and 1/3 of the members will be retire, and then will fresh elections will take place for those 1/3 seats. So these are the elected members. In Rajya Sabha, the indirectly elected members. Rajya Sabha also has 12 nominated members. They are nominated by the president. These all are questions which you understand are very important from prelims perspective. So the president nominates these members, and they are from those among those people, let's say, who have left their contribution or who have had certain good contribution in the fields of literature, science, art, and social science. Sorry, social service. So please remember these pointers. Remember that they are nominated by president, and remember there are 12 nominated members in Rajya Sabha. What about the लोक सभा? You know यहाँ पे तो डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन होगा लोक सभा में या फिर स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली जिसको आप विधानसभा बोलते हो. So their people are directly electing the representatives. And you know that the country is divided into territorial constituency, one representative from each constituency. Universal adult suffrage, which is everyone above the age of 18 years, will be allowed to vote. Okay, there will be no discrepancy on the basis of, let's say, education or property or gender or whatsoever. 543 कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है, 1971 सेंसस से यही चल रही है. There are reasons for this, which we will deal in detail जब हम इसको as a detailed topic करेंगे when we will talk about parliament etc. Now here you know that tenure is what? 5 years, which is the maximum, which also means that before this also they can be dissolved. For example, Lok Sabha can be dissolved if no party or coalition can form the government, or if Prime Minister advises the President that we have to dissolve it earlier and we need to hold fresh elections. These things have happened in the past. So again, when we will discuss this in detail, you will see those examples of history also when things have happened like that. Maximum is 5 years, but can be dissolved earlier also. This is what you need to remember. Okay. Now, very, very important point. The question, what does the parliament do? Or in other words, if you say so, what is the function of the parliament? Of course, one is legislative function, which is your lawmaking. That is understood. That is what we clearly understand. But if you go into the details, okay, so technically, it is actually that body which does not make the law. It is actually one which approves the law. Although we call it as law making body, the reason is, now understand, when you will do the next topic of executive, आपको ये ज़्यादा समझ में आएगा. But for the time being, just understand. So on one hand, you have this body जहाँ पे आपके legislatures हैं, and from amongst them, you will have the selected ministers, right? जो आपके government form करेंगे. On the other hand, you also have what you call as, and for what you are preparing is this bureaucracy, the civil servants. So actual task जो होता है ना bill draft करने का, what is a bill and all of that, अभी हम अगले section we'll see that in the next section in some time. But the actual task of drafting the bill, it is actually done by the civil servants, the bureaucrats, under the supervision of the minister concerned. जिस भी ministry से related bill होगा, the civil servants will formulate the bill. The work of the legislature will actually to approve it. But why it is called as lawmaking? Because when a bill is proposed, it undergoes several procedures and it results in act or law. So the process happens in the legislature. That is why we call it, call it as performing the legislative function. You also need to see that the substance and even the timing of the bill, when it has to be introduced, etc., that's done by the cabinet. And no major bill can be introduced in the parliament without the approval of the cabinet. So then you might have the question that can only the ruling party, or let's say the cabinet, because they are the ministers, so do only they have the right to introduce this bill? No. The private members. Who are the private members? Private members matlab the ones which are not the ministers. And prelims में इन सब पे question आया हुआ है. So whatever, every line that I'm speaking is of some significance for your examination. So please be very, very attentive here and focus on what we are doing right now. So private members means those who are not the minister. Even they can introduce the bill, but the chances of getting it passed is very difficult if the government doesn't support it. So the one function is lawmaking. Another function is controlling the executive and ensuring the accountability of executive. So अभी मैंने आपको ये diagram बना के दिखाया था legislature में, if you have Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, some members from here and some members from here, it is they who form the government. So executive is a sub part of legislature. Legislature is larger in picture. Executive will be just a smaller part of it. The ones ruling. So the whole idea is that you have to make them accountable, because it is this executive which is running the system actually, taking part in the governance. So the legislature, which is like, will include your ministers plus your opposition, non-ministers. So they will control the executive, and they will ensure the accountability. What are the mechanisms by which they can control the executive? हम उसको details में देखेंगे जब हम वो topic करेंगे later. Okay? Because these questions again can figure out. Mains में भी prelims में भी. नेक्स्ट इज फाइनेंशियल फंक्शन. सी यू से कि क्या लेजिस्लेचर फाइनेंशियल भी काम करती है? बिल्कुल करती है. तो इफ यू रिमेंबर, ठीक है, बजट आप सुनते हो कहाँ सुनते हो? हाउस सेशंस में ही होते हैं ना. तो फाइनेंशियल थिंग्स आर डेल्ट विद. Also it is about taxation. So in democracy the legislature controls taxation. How does it happen? Again in details later. And how the money has to be used by the government. Government is, let's say, introducing any tax, तो उसको legislature का approval चाहिए, लोकसभा का approval चाहिए, and they have to ensure that whatever financial resources they need to implement any program, if they are not overspending anything, if they are not exceeding the amount that they have got, or if they need any extra amount, they will have to take it with the help of permission of the legislature. How does this entire process happen is a different thing, जो हमें बाद में करना है, we'll do it later. But that is also one function. So budget, annual financial statement, इसको budget को ही बोलते हैं ऐसा. So that is actually done by the legislature also. Next is representation. So representation is very clear. It is representative democracy only, especially in India, if you say. So parliament represents the divergent views of members. Either they belong to different regional groups, social group, economic, religious, whatsoever. Debating function, so it is the highest forum of debate because it gives that platform, and there is no limitation on the power of discussion. The members have no limitation on the power of discussion. Limitations here, which means that you can discuss any matter if you want to. We are not technically using the word limitation because they are actually free to speak. We give them that freedom to speak on any matter without fear, and then parliament can analyze each and every issue that is there in the nation, and that is very important in democratic decision making. Next is your constituent function. What is constituent function? It is basically about making amendments to the constitution. We have a separate chapter on it, we'll deal it later. So both the houses of the parliament get equal power in the case of making any constitutional amendment. Electoral functions. So there are these two elections, president and vice president, which are conducted by the parliament. How does it happen? The presidential and the vice president. Presidential तो अभी होने भी वाला है कुछ time में, तो ये again is in the news, so you can keep an eye on this till we reach to that point. क्योंकि हमें we are progressing it from a story perspective, linking each topic with the previous one done, and in the coming class whatever we do. So whenever that topic will come, हम उसको discuss करेंगे. So two elections happen from legislature, president and vice president. Judicial function, it is about considering the proposal for, let's say, removal of president, vice president, and judges of High Court and Supreme Court. Okay. Now see, both the houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they will have their different sets of powers. That is okay. Some of the powers are similar, common for both of them, and questions have been asked me on this point. 2022 में भी अभी आया है, and I think 2020 maybe there was a question or somewhere around that. So this topic पर they have asked you questions every time. So two houses will have similar powers also, and at times there will be different set of powers for these two houses, and that is what we'll see. Let's say अगर हम जल्दी से लोकसभा के powers को देखें, so making laws on the matters which are given in the union list and the concurrent list. It is given in the 7th schedule, the 3-list system. I have explained that earlier. Also, they can introduce and enact the money and the non-money bills. Now, what exactly is the definition of money bill is very crucial to be understood, which will be detailed discussed later. But abhi ke liye just remember this point. Approving the proposal for taxation, budget and financial statements, controlling the executive. अभी मैंने आपको बताया था ये सारे modes हम detail में करेंगे. How? By asking questions, by asking supplementary questions, passing resolutions, introducing motions, and also through the mainly no confidence motion. Amending the constitution, approving the proclamation of emergency. So we have a separate chapter here. Then electing the president and vice president and removing. ये अभी ऊपर आपको पढ़ाया ये सब. Then also removing the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, establishing committees and commissions and considering their report. So what are parliamentary committees? हम देखेंगे again as a separate topic later. राज्य सभा के power में the non-money bill को approve and consider करना. So you can see here money bill के बारे में नहीं लिखा हुआ है approving और ये सब. उसका reason है. So we will deal with that again. But suggesting amendment to the money bill. Approving the constitutional amendment. So do you see that this point and the amendments. They are same for both of them. Exercising control over executing questions, motion, resolution, etc. Participating in the election and removal of president, vice president, judges, and the removal also. Acha, one thing, it alone can initiate the process of removal of vice president. Only Rajya Sabha has the power to initiate the process for removal of vice president. There is a reason for it. If you know it, write in the comment section. If you don't know it, have that curiosity. I'll answer that जब हम वो करेंगे. Also, it can give the Union Parliament the power to make laws on the matters given in the state list. But there are certain pointers जहाँ पे Rajya Sabha gets exceptional powers. One major thing is that Rajya Sabha का whole idea is to give representation to the state, and therefore we have to ensure that we are able to protect the powers of the state. So what happens here that any matter which affects the state, it must be referred to Rajya Sabha for the consent and the approval of Rajya Sabha. Then, so if the Union Parliament wishes to remove a matter from the state list, because over the state list only the state has the power to make laws, except in certain situations which we'll discuss later. But if the Parliament wants to remove some matter from the state list and put it in the Union or the concurrent list, so Rajya Sabha's approval is very important, and we need to see that the members, this is actually done in practicality. This is what this C की experience ऐसा देखने को मिलता है that Rajya Sabha is not doing its work. The idea is to represent the state, but at times it's seen that the members are just trying to represent their parties. What about the Lok Sabha powers? So there are certain powers which are exercised only by the Lok Sabha. For example, Rajya Sabha cannot initiate, reject or amend the money bills. They can suggest amendment, but they cannot amend. There is a difference in that. So what exactly is money bill? जैसा मैंने बोला, हम later deal करेंगे. Also, the Council of Ministers is responsible to Lok Sabha and not Rajya Sabha. This is a feature of parliamentary system. So you will remember this point from here ताकि वहाँ पर काम आ सके. So Rajya Sabha of course can hold discussions, debates, they can criticize the government, but they cannot remove the government. Then you might see the question that why do give we in this matter, why are we giving more powers to Lok Sabha? Because the whole idea is that Rajya Sabha is actually an indirectly elected body and Lok Sabha is actually which is done by the final authority, which is by people itself. So it is by logic that the representatives, which are directly elected by the people, should have the crucial powers of removing a government and controlling the finances. In all the other spheres, including passing of non-money bills, constitutional amendments, impeaching the president, and removing the vice president, they have co-equal powers. Now, very important question, how does the lawmaking process happen? So, of course, a definite procedure takes place. Some are given in the constitution, some have been derived or evolved from conventions. Convention means जो भी traditions में चलते चले आ रहा होता है. This image itself is very, very handy to understand the entire lawmaking process. Firstly, let's say there is a bill. So before I tell you this, let's do some kind of exercise for this, slightly understanding the background of it. Now, firstly, bill kya hai? Bill is a draft of the proposed law. So whatever law they would want to make, एक उसका draft proposal आएगा ना, एक blueprint kind of structure. That is your bill. Of course, then the entire process, this will take place, and then finally the bill will become a law or act जब आप उसको बोलेंगे. ठीक है? So there are different types of bills also. So I have told you when a non-minister proposes a bill, it is called as private member's bill. When a minister proposes a bill, it is called as government bill, or it is also called as public bill. So that is one kind of a bill. Another kind of bills include talking about money bill and non-money bill. Now money bill also is a part of financial bill. So ये दो हम करेंगे जब हम detail में देखेंगे. Then two other kinds of bills like ordinary bill and constitutional amendment bill. So we will see the details of all the four kinds of bills. Okay, because it is given in detail in LAXMIKANTH. When we reach to that topic, we'll do that. Now, before we see that how this process happens, understand the before things happening, like the prerequisite of that. For example, even before a bill is introduced in the parliament, there will certain debates happening or there will be discussions happening that do you actually need to introduce a bill or not. Let's say A political party may pressurize the government that please initiate a bill because there has to be election promises or you have to improve the chances of winning in the next election, etc. Government also might be persuaded by the interest group, media, and citizens forum that you should bring a law on this particular matter. So lawmaking is not just about a legal procedure that okay one after the other this is happening. It is also a political course of action because it can make or break government as well. Then when the preparation of the bill will come, abhi it is not introduced. We are going into the back end of the story. So even the preparation of the bill will involve several considerations. For example, if that bill gets converted into a law, do we have enough resources to implement that law? Let's say we are making certain education related bill. So do you have that much of enough resources that you will be able to provide that education to the people, to the children once that law comes into existence? So of course, resource understanding is important. Support or opposition to the bill is very important. Impact that the law will have on the electoral prospect of that party. Forget about people, but party will also think about itself. ठीक है. Coalition की बात है तो all the partners of the coalition will have to accept the provisions of the bill. एक party कुछ अकेले नहीं कर सकती. So these things cannot be ignored. They have to be considered. The cabinet considers all these before arriving at a decision to enact the law. ठीक है, सब कुछ डिसाइड होके फिर एक बिल जो है वो प्रपोज होता है. Once the cabinet approves the policy behind the legislation, the task of drafting the legislation begins. उसके पीछे की पॉलिसी को हाँ कर दिया गया, फिर वो ड्राफ्टिंग शुरू हो जाएगी. The draft will be called as the bill and that will be done by the concerned ministry. ठीक है. अब जैसे यहाँ इन्होंने बोला कि मैरिजेबल एज की जो बात हो रही है, to raise the age of the girls from 18 to 21, that will be prepared by the law ministry. So as whatever concerned ministry will be there. Another ministry involved in this will be women and child welfare because it relates to that. Similarly, so within the parliament, if you introduce a bill, can it be only introduced in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha or both? So it can be introduced in both. It can also be introduced by any member of the house, either a minister or a private member. But often it is done by a minister because private member के bill की उतनी significance होती नहीं है. But technically it can be done. But about the money bill, only Lok Sabha में introduce हो सकता है, and once passed, then we can send it to Rajya Sabha just for suggesting the amendments, but not doing anything else. Okay. Also discussion जो है bills पे वो committees में भी होती है because in the parliament you will have like see they have limited number of sessions, ठीक है, in the whole year, and आधा से ज़्यादा time it also has disturbing scenarios. So and they have so much of work to do. So all the detailed provisions of the bill will not be able to be discussed in the parliament. So there are committees made for that and they take care of it. So as I told, parliamentary committees पे separate topic हम बाद में करेंगे. Then the committee का जो recommendation होगा वो house को भेजा जाएगा. So they are also called as miniature legislature because they perform the major part of it. Then in the next stage the bill will be voted upon. Then अगर एक non money bill है तो वो दूसरे house को भी भेजी जाएगी. Same procedure will happen. What is very important to be known is that without getting passed by both the houses, a bill cannot become an act. So let's say there is a disagreement between the both houses, there is a provision of joint session of parliament कि हम दोनों को साथ बैठा के राज्यसभा and लोक सभा. Usually they conduct their own separate businesses, but if there will be a disagreement of the bill, we will have them together and joint session would be there, and then we will resolve that deadlock. Acha, if it is a money bill, Rajya Sabha has not much of a right. It can neither approve the bill nor suggest changes. Sorry, it can either approve the bill. It can only either approve the bill, matlab approval is like to accept it, or only suggest the amendments or the changes. It cannot reject the bill. And if within 14 days of getting the bill, Rajya Sabha do not take any action on the money bill, it will be considered कि वो पास ही हो गया है, ठीक है? And Lok Sabha also तो accept it, right? Anyways, we'll detail में see the discussion on money bill later. यहाँ पे जैसे आर्टिकल 109 का एक स्पेशल प्रोसीजर दिया हुआ है that it cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha or Council of States. Please remember this point very clearly. When the bill will be passed by both the houses, it will be sent to the president for assent. Assent means let's say permission you can say, or let's say final granting कि हाँ वो हाँ कह रहे हैं. When the president will give assent, only then that bill will become a law. These smaller points you need to remember. Now let's quickly see the procedure with the help of this diagram. So here is the bill. It can be introduced in either house, if it is a non-money bill, or if it is a money bill, it can only be introduced in Lok Sabha. After the introduction in the house, the bill will be sent to the committee or it will be discussed in the house itself, depending on that. If it is sent to the committee will give a report. The committee also takes inputs from people at several points of time in different bills. After the committee gives report, the house may or may not accept the report. It will of course happen because they will have a detailed discussion of the bill in the house. After the detailed discussion on the committee's report, the bill will either be accepted by the house or rejected. After getting it done, if it is rejected or accepted, it is sent to the other house. ठीक है, दोनों केस में it will be sent to the other house. The whole process will go to the second house, like everything. The same process will happen in the second house also. So the other house will either approve or give some recommendations. If there is a deadlock, joint session will be held. If not, then it will be sent to the president. President will approve or send back the bill for reconsideration. ठीक है, एक बार president भी वापस भेज सकते हैं. But once the president approves the bill, it becomes the law. This is a simple thing, which again, as I said, detail में हम लक्ष्मीकांत से बाद में करेंगे. So I've told you we will have a section on how does the parliament control the executive. Now, because it is very important, because the executive is drawn from the party itself, or let's say the coalition of parties which is having a majority in Lok Sabha. So you cannot say that they will just have unlimited and arbitrary powers in random with the help of the party. They need to have the support of legislature in that case. So only if the parliament is active and vigilant, they can keep a check on the executive. So there are, let's say, certain procedures or instruments that we have for the parliamentary control or the executive. Also, you need to see that there is one special pointer which again हम parliamentary topic में करेंगे, which is on parliamentary privileges. So no action can be taken against a member or whatever the member may have said in the legislature. Then presiding officer जो होंगे, for example your speaker or chairman or deputy speaker or deputy speaker or deputy chairman, so they will have the final powers in deciding the matters of breach of privilege. Anyways, we will talk on these later. So let's see the instruments of the controlling parliamentary control over the executive. One major is your deliberation and discussion. Of course, like you can have instruments like question ask, जो कि हर दिन होता है, जहाँ पे you will ask the ministers the questions related to any issue and they will have to answer. Then you have the mechanism of 0 hour, where the members can raise any matter which they feel is important. ठीक है, half-an-hour discussion होता है on some important public matters like that. So it is very important thing that you are asking the questions, discussing with them, and the questions will directly hit to the point that we want information from the government. प्राइस राइज है तो क्यों है, फूड ग्रेन्स अवेलेबल है कि नहीं, वीकर सेक्शंस पर अट्रॉसिटी क्यों हो रही है, व्हाट अबाउट लॉट मार्केटिंग एक्सेट्रा, व्हाटएवर. Of course, not the sensitive matter, but any other thing will be discussed here which is significant. And the members can also criticize the government if needed, if they are not satisfied with the way that they are functioning. At times they are, you will see that the members are, raising their voice and walking to the well of the house, walking in protest, etc. Next is approval and ratification of laws. So, of course, a bill can become a law only with approval of the parliament. If it is not passed by both the houses, and passed by both houses does not mean passing by the government. Houses means including the other members, of course. So, until and unless it is done, a bill will not become a law. So, that is like pretty much clear here. देन फाइनेंशियल कंट्रोल की अगर आप बात करते हो तो जो रिसोर्सेज हैं to implement the program, वो सब बजट के थ्रू ही आता है. So that is like pretty much clear that you witness otherwise also. So this obligation allows the legislature to exercise control over the purse strings of the government, that they do not have they do not have like unlimited money to spend in whatever way they want to. बजट के थ्रू सारा जो भी ग्रांट्स हैं, जो भी जितनी जरूरत है, whatever requirement is done, that is fixed here, right? So the legislature may even refuse to grant the resources to the government. Then you will see no confidence motion, most powerful weapon that would be called as having a check on the executive, because No confidence means we are not showing confidence in the government. So the government can survive only till the point as long as they are having the support of the party or the coalition of parties, okay, that have a majority in the Lok Sabha. Until that's done, they will not be accepted as a government, and then सरकार जो है वो बीच में कभी भी गिर सकती है if each of the government will lose the confidence of the Lok Sabha. ठीक है, so if they will not be able to retain the support of their coalition partners, they will not have the adequate numbers to be called as a majority, and उसको हम कहेंगे सरकार गिर जाना, the government will not exist. So therefore, it is very important for a responsive government that parliament effectively controls the executive. Otherwise, the executive will do whatever they want to. Next is about parliamentary committee. So we have already seen, see, it is pretty obvious. Whatever they have given you is just a summary if you say so, because we have a separate chapter on parliamentary committee. So the whole idea of having parliamentary committees is that जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि in parliament you do not, in the houses you do not have that much of enough time in the sessions to discuss each and every minute detail of that particular bill. So to scrutinize, for the scrutiny to send to those parliamentary committees, which will take care of the detailed provisions of the bill, will think on each and every provision, will gather resources to say if it is right or wrong, etc., and they will perform such functions. ठीक है, what are the committees, how many committees, etc. हम उसको आगे डिटेल में देखेंगे. So you have different kinds of committees like standing committees, joint parliamentary committees. So all of these is like we will see in detail later. So the whole idea will be to reduce the burden on the parliament, because the parliament only then will have the work to approve the work done in the committees. ठीक है, कभी कभी they can make alterations, of course, if they reject the recommendations of the committee, that is a different thing, but mostly it will be about accepting approval because the committees are doing all the work in the back end, right? So no bill can become a law, no budget will be sanctioned unless it is approved by the parliament, but the committees do all the background work for the parliament. And how does the parliament regulate itself? So as we saw that, okay, it is a debating forum, so it has certain functions to be performed. Some discussions might be meaningful, some, they are just done as randomly, they are not considered that way. So constitution may be ensure करा है that we have the smooth conduct of the business, and it has made the presiding officer of the legislature, जो chair पर होंगे, the final authority, कि whatever is to be decided, the presiding officer will decide. Also, for example, there is another mechanism of anti-defection law. Anti-defection law is the whole idea that if you have been elected from, actually it is a very broad term to be discussed, which, because it is 10th schedule of the constitution, which we will discuss, we have a chapter on it also in detail, so हम इस पे बात करेंगे. But in short, let's say if you have been elected from one another particular party, and after that you just switch to the other party, and there are other provisions also which deals with the anti-defection law, that you cannot just easily go to the other party. ठीक है, so ये सारी चीजें हैं, and then amendment आया 1985 में जिसको anti-defection law बोलते हैं. So all of these are the steps by which the parliament regulates itself also. So जैसे यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, if a member remains absent in the house, if it has been asked, I think if he or she has been asked by the party leadership, or it remains present but votes against the instruction of the party, or leaves the membership of the party and switch to the other party. So all of that comes under defection. So here all of these you can read and then go for these exercises. You should definitely solve these exercises. They are very very handy in seeing that how much of it you have learned, how much it you are able to execute, etc. So kindly do make use of it, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. We have finished legislature quite in detail from this chapter. I do recommend you to read this in detail, and you don't have to worry if you will have any question. You can note it down, and you can wait for me to start discussing on the topic of parliament and state legislature when the topic comes. In case you find any problem, of course you can try to find the answers yourself, but still if you don't, so just try to get those answers either by yourself or wait for the lectures to come when we do that topic. So see you guys in the next video on the topic of executive. Take care, then. Bye bye.